Good evening and welcome back to
Another episode of Raw Cross. Oh,
the Raw Prospect Podcast. My name is Michael Ween. We are live Thursday, October 24th, 9 p.m. Central Time, live from Houston, Texas. I am your host, coming to you live from Houston for our 2024 World Series preview. Yes, we have come all the way to the climax of the 2024 MLB season with a World Series clash between two heavyweights. The Los Angeles Dodgers, who finished the regular season with the best record in the National League, and the New York Yankees, who finished with the best record in the American League. And we are going to preview this series top to bottom, all the storylines, the best players, the star power, the keys to each team winning, and make our predictions at the end. And joining me to do all that, as he always does, is Emmy Nixon from Austin, Texas. Emmy, how are you tonight on the eve of a World Series heavyweight clash?
I'm doing great, man. This is one that it felt destined from the start of the playoffs. You saw how Shohei Ohtani started this thing with just, I mean, we'll get into it, but he's been hitting like 700 throughout this entire playoff run. It just felt like these were the two best teams overall, and it just felt like it was a perfect storyline. And the stars have aligned for baseball, and this is going to be a great series.
So you talked about the stars aligning for baseball, both literally and figuratively. If you look at the star power that's going to be on the diamond each and every night throughout this series, but also the stars aligning for baseball in a sense that this series is going to do massive things for the popularity of the sport. At least we think. Because of, number one, the Dodgers side of things. You have two players that they signed in the offseason that come from overseas in Japan. And during their Padres series, in Game 5 of that series, which was a do-or-die game in the NLDS, almost 15 million people tuned in from just Japan to watch that series because of Shohei Ohtani and Yoshinobu Yamamoto, one of the Dodgers starters, who they signed to a $300 million contract this offseason. So, just from that standpoint, it's huge. And then you have all of this star power, which we'll get into, I'm sure, here in a little bit. But in your mind, what does this do for baseball? How good of an outcome is this for baseball overall?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge, especially if they go out and they, you know, ball out like they have been. I mean, you look at Otani, he's been everything you could have asked for and more. And if anything, he's elevated his game, if that's even possible, in the postseason. And I mean, if you watched Otani throughout his career, you had a feeling he would, but there's always a chance that in your first playoff run, you come out and you kind of have the nerves and have a little bit of a struggle. But there was none of that with Otani. And for Yamamoto, he's been really good as well. So, I mean, if they come out and they play how they have been, then it's even better.
Yeah, it's been, look, these two teams, both heavyweights, both in the top two of the three highest payrolls. And this doesn't happen all that often. I think there's a common misconception that the Yankees and the Dodgers always get to the World Series, and that's just not true. This is the Yankees' first World Series appearance in 15 years. And on the other side, aside from the Dodgers winning that World Series in 2020 in that COVID-shortened season, their only other World Series appearance was 2018. And then you have to go all the way back to like the early 1980s to find a World Series appearance for the Dodgers. So it's just not true that these teams always match up, and we're finally getting it. We've been waiting on it for years. Now, I will push back. Shohei's been great in the postseason, but he's only been great when there's runners on base. His numbers when runners aren't on base aren't good. But he has come through. He's hitting like over an 800 batting average when there are runners on. So that's really what you want him to do, flipping over that lineup. But overall, he's not hitting like a 700 batting average for the postseason. That would be that's something nobody's ever done. And then like for Yamamoto, he's been good as well. He's just not giving them the length. So there's a lot of star power on each side, and I guess that's where we can kind of dive into kind of the matchups and the storylines on both sides. Is there somewhere that you want to start specifically? Yankees pitching against Dodgers lineup, or Dodgers pitching against Yankees lineup? Where do you want to start this conversation?
Well, I think we started with the type of series we expect it to be. And for me, I expect it to be one that's a lot of home runs, a lot of hitting, a lot of offense. Obviously, there's star pitchers involved in the series, as there always is with any World Series. But to me, I look at the these offenses just in general. Even on the back half of these lineups, you've had some really good moments from some of these guys. So I think both of these teams are coming in on really strong form from an offensive standpoint. And so I think we're going to see some 10-9 type of games. We're going to see some, 8-5 type of games where there's a lot of fireworks throughout the game. Now, from a Yankees offense versus Dodgers pitching standpoint, to me, for the Yankees, it's all about getting the Dodgers in a bind early on in the series because we know that they don't have the amount of starting pitchers needed to go for a 7-game series. They already have to have a game where they have a bullpen game. So to make it even worse on them, come out game one, get their starter out of the game, and then they'll really be in some deep shit.
Yeah, I think when you talk about just the pure star power in this series, there are a couple things I want to bring up before we really dive deep into Dodgers pitching against Yankees lineup. Um, with Otani, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, who's supposed to play in this series, but he's still dealing with that ankle injury. Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton. Those are 5 heavyweight stars on both sides of the field in this series. There are 5 players that have won an MVP in their career that will play in this World Series. That's the most former MVPs to appear in a World Series ever in the 100-plus year history of baseball. So 5 former MVPs that are playing in this series, and that doesn't even include a guy like Juan Soto, who will turn 26 tomorrow, funny enough, in Game 1 of the World Series, and will probably win an MVP eventually if he keeps on his current career arc. But 5 former MVPs in the series. And then you look at it from this perspective. The highest weighted runs created plus this year in baseball amongst qualified players with 100 or more at bats this year. Aaron Judge had the highest weighted runs created plus at 218. Shohei Ohtani had the second highest weighted runs created plus at 181. And then Juan Soto was just behind him this season at 180. This is the first World Series ever to have the top 3 qualified players in weighted runs created plus during that season in the World Series. And it's also the first time in a long time that the 2 players who led their respective league in home runs, Aaron Judge for the American League and Shohei Ohtani for the National League, will meet up in the World Series. And I have the last time it happened. I'll just have to get to the stat in my pile of stats that I have in front of me. But that's just kind of to put into perspective like what we're going to be watching in this series. Whether you hate the Yankees and you love the Dodgers, you love the Yankees and you hate the Dodgers, or you just flat out hate both teams and can't stand them with all your guts and everything inside you, this is something we never seen in baseball before. The amount of star power that we're going to be watching on both sides, and that doesn't even include, um, you know, the pitchers and the star power that we have on that side, where we have a guy like Garrett Cole who's won a Cy Young, and Carlos Rodon, and maybe more so on the Dodgers side, you'd probably say Yamamoto, who they paid to be a star, and Jack Flaherty, who's been very good in his career. So much star power and so much time um, to like digest what we're going to be watching there. But from a Dodgers pitching standpoint and a Yankees hitting standpoint, um, the Dodgers are going to need minimum 2 to 3 quality starts, meaning 5 innings, 0 to 2 earned runs, or 6 innings, less than 3 earned runs. They're going to need at least 2 of those starts in this series from the group of Jack Flaherty, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and Walker Buehler in order to avoid overexposure of their bullpen. That's going to be very important, especially when you consider that they basically have a whole rotation that's on the injured list and out for the season. So they ran into bad injury luck from a pitching standpoint this season. And these are the 3 guys that they're heavily relying upon to get length from in these games. They need at least 2 of these guys in the first 5 games of this series to give them 5 innings. Because if not, they're going to be heavily relying on a bullpen that's already pitched the most innings of any bullpen in these playoffs by far at 57 innings. And say like Walker Buehler in Game 3, he's going to be pitching against Clark Schmidt for the Yankees in Game 3 on Monday at Yankee Stadium. If he cannot get to, let's say, the 5th inning, or if he has to be taken out in the 3rd inning, that puts a lot of stress on the Dodgers bullpen to finish out that game and then come back the next day and pitch an entire game. Because the Dodgers bullpen, it's going to be a bullpen game for Game 4. So your point about the Dodgers needing some length from a couple of these guys in a couple of these games early on in this series is well taken. Now, the last thing I'll say is one of the things that I was worried about going into the playoffs with the Yankees is they had really struggled against lefties. And when you look at the Royals, who they faced in the division series, they had a staff full of lefties. Seth Lugo, Cole Ragans, the list goes on and on. They had arms coming out of the bullpen that were lefties, that threw funky stuff. Same thing with the Guardians, especially in that bullpen. They had a plethora of lefties that were just filthy coming out of their bullpen. They were the best bullpen in baseball coming into the playoffs. Now, the Yankees eventually got to them as they were exposed to them more and more. But that was one thing I was concerned about. One thing I like for the Yankees in terms of this series against the Dodgers pitching staff is that when you look at the 3 starters and then the current state of the Dodgers bullpen, there's only one lefty currently on this roster. Now we'll see if Alex Vesia, one of their lefties, can come back from injury and be on this World Series roster. That would at least give them another lefty that they can use in some of these lefty lanes for the Yankees. But, like, you look at Jack Flaherty, you look at Yamamoto, you look at Buehler. Those are all righties. And the Yankees have fared significantly better against righties who throw fastballs, sliders, and curveballs rather than the sweepers and the other nasty breaking stuff, the changeups. This postseason, you can see the splits. The Yankees still struggle against lefties. In the postseason, they're hitting 198 with a 308 slug and a 656 OPS with only 5 RBIs and 2 home runs against lefties. Against righties, they're hitting 255 with a 461 slugging percentage, an 805 OPS, 11 home runs, and 34 RBIs. So one thing I think about going into this series is I think the matchup between the Dodgers starting pitching, all righties, against a Yankees lineup that loves going against righties, can the Dodgers get the length out of that, um, out of a couple of those starters? Can they get a couple quality starts in like the first 5 games of this series? Because they're gonna need it. Because you can't just rely so much heavily on your bullpen. Because once, I mean, there's a stat out there that once teams see your relievers a third time, that's typically when they get hit. Um, so I think that's the key on the Dodgers side of things. They have the two guys in their bullpen that they're really relying heavily upon in the back end are Blake Trinan, who's their closer, and goodness, who's the other guy? Uh, Blake Trinan. Hold on, I have it right here. Um, yeah, so it's Blake Trinan and goodness, why am I forgetting it? Oh, Michael Kopech. Blake Trinan and Michael Kopech. Those are their two best relievers. And those guys are righties. So I think that's the key on the Yankees side of things. Do you have anything from that side of the ball that you want to mention?
Well, I think how the Dodgers manager goes about, you know, having his starters get length is important because these starters are going to need to have some mental toughness. Like this lineup that they're facing in the Yankees is so talented that you're going to get got at some point, but you can't let it spiral. Is the thing. Like you can give up, say, a 2-run home run, but don't give up the 2 hits after that and then give up even more runs. Like the big innings are what's going to kill you if you're one of these Dodger starters. Like just hang in there and kind of if they can just get out of the jams because they're going to have to.
Yeah. I think the X factor amongst this Dodgers pitching staff, meaning the starters, is in fact Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Um, the postseason hasn't treated him perfectly well.
Yeah.
He has a 5.11 ERA with only a 21.2% strikeout percentage. But if I'm a Dodgers fan, just being completely objective here, I'm not necessarily worried about his ability to perform in the World Series. And I actually kind of like, of all, like if you were to ask me, of each of these 3 starters, Flaherty, Yamamoto, and Buehler, who is the most likely to give them a start that you just go, wow, that's a start we're going to look back on. The 6 inning shutout kind of start, the 7 innings 1 earned run kind of start. I think it's Yoshinobu Yamamoto because when he's on, he has A grade stuff, and he pitches in a way that gives the New York Yankees lineup, or can give the New York Yankees lineup, some real trouble. He kind of pitches backwards. He uses his fastball just 40.4% of the time. He kind of uses his breaking ball, that sharp slider. You know, he's going to try to nibble on the outer parts of the zone. He's going to try to get those breaking balls across for strikes early on in count so that way he can go back to his fastball once he's ahead. He kind of pitches backwards, where most pitchers will use their fastball early on in counts and then go to their breaking pitches to get outs. I think Yamamoto kind of having that kind of pitch mix, similar to the pitch mix that a lot of Royals pitchers had against the Yankees, will actually benefit him and could benefit him and give him, the kind of length that you want. But I also think, Jack Flaherty definitely has the kind of stuff to give them that kind of start as well. The one I'm least confident in is Walker Buehler. So I think that's it from a Dodgers pitching point of view. On the other side, what's pretty crazy about this is the Yankees have five healthy starters in this going into this World Series. Five guys that can give them lots of length. Now, will all of them end up giving them length? Probably not, because this Dodgers lineup is just so powerful. But, and I see the smirk there. Don't think that I don't think or know what you're thinking when I said that. Um, Garrett Cole is going to start game one. Carlos Rodon is going to start game two. Clark Schmidt's going to start game three. And then Luis Heel is going to start game four. And then they have Marcus Stroman, who, if they're down in this series or down in one of these games big, they can just give the ball to Marcus Stroman and he can he can give them 4 innings. He can give them bulk innings to where they don't have to really expose a lot of their high-end bullpen in a loss, which I like. I think that's a slight advantage for the Yankees, is that if, say, tomorrow the Dodgers get to Cole and he has to come out in the fourth inning, the Yankees don't have to necessarily then go to like a Luke Weaver or a Tommy Kahnle or a Clay Holmes early on. Because you don't want to expose those guys so early on against a lineup that's as good as, with as much slug as the Dodgers have. The Guardians, they were feisty. They were getting on base. They were working counts, but they don't have the slug and the power nearly that the Dodgers do, obviously. I think having the ability, if you're the Yankees, to give the ball to a Marcus Stroman, who's in the bullpen kind of as a long man, not having to expose those other bullpen pieces quite yet in a loss, is a slight advantage. And just not overly exposing your bullpen early on. But I think really the key here for the Yankees is if Garrett Cole pitches to his baseball card in the playoffs, if Garrett Cole gives you the kind of starts that we paid him for, and if Carlos Rodon can do the same, one of his two starts in this series, assuming this goes 6 or 7, which I think it will,
Yeah.
The Yankees will win the series, because that's their biggest advantage in the series is starting pitching, and the fact that they don't have to. They're not in as much of a bind when it comes to finding innings from their starters, because they have more starters than the Dodgers, and they're slightly more reliable right now than the Dodgers. So I think it really comes down to, and it's not rocket science. It's really like, can Garrett Cole go out there and shove tomorrow and give the Yankees a 1-0 series lead? That's really what it comes down to. The high-end Yankee starters, that's where they can separate in this series, because everything else is pretty even. Bullpens, I think the Dodgers bullpen is slightly deeper, but both bullpens have been great for the most part this postseason. Both lineups, especially at the top, are awesome, like all world. I give the Dodgers a slight edge, just in terms of the depth of their lineup. I mean, they have guys at the bottom of their lineup that have made tons of money and awesome careers, just being awesome hitters on different teams. Think about a Kike Hernandez or Will Smith or those kinds of guys. Like, I give them the slight edge in that department. But other than that, like, this is a fairly evenly matched series. So I think for the Yankees, it's about Cole and Rodon. And go out there and do what you do. You have anything to say on this side? Yankees pitching against Dodgers lineup? Because I know there's Ohtani that we can talk about. There's Freddie Freeman, who's kind of banged up. Mookie Betts has been awesome this postseason. Anything come to mind for you?
Well, to me, it's those final 3 innings of games. I think the starting pitching will hold up just fine for the Yankees. And I think there's a good chance that the Yankees get out to some leads in some of these games. But the one thing I will say on the Dodgers is they might be the most clutch uh, like group of stars in baseball. I don't know if you would agree with me on that, but it just feels like, well, especially this postseason, um, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Shohei, those three guys. It just feels like when they step up to the plate in those final 3 innings, and they got to get a run out of the hat, they're just able to do it.
Yeah. Something else from a Yankees standpoint, I'm watching for a key matchup. The Yankees have some left-handed specialists in their bullpen that I'm going to be watching for uh, when they come in against particularly the top of this Dodgers lineup where they have most of their lefties. Shohei's a lefty, Freddie Freeman is a lefty, and then Max Muncy is a lefty. These are the lefties that the Dodgers have at the top and then the meat of their order. The Yankees have and are getting back another guy, uh, supposedly in this series, that can kind of, hopefully for the Yankees, if they want to gain another advantage, kind of mitigate what the damage that the top of that order can do later in games. Um, think about a Tommy Kahnle with that changeup. He has good numbers against lefties. He's kind of a Yankees special or one of their specialists in the bullpen to come in, and that's his job. Like, get out these lefties, get out of this inning, get this lefty out, get Shohei out in the end of the inning, in a critical spot. Tim Hill, who's kind of the sidewinder lefty, who induces soft contact. And then Nestor Cortez, who they're getting back and is not going to be built up to starting pitching. Like, he's not going to be a starter, but he can give them 1 or 2 innings. And if if the Dodgers are flipping over the lineup a third time tomorrow night, and the Yankees don't want Cole, say his pitch count is up, or they don't want Cole seeing Ohtani a third time. They don't want Ohtani seeing Cole a third time. Um, the Yankees might then go to Nestor Cortez, who's a lefty and who has great numbers facing Ohtani. And those are the kind of pitches that Ohtani struggles most with. To kind of go through that lane of lefties, Shohei, Freddie, and Max Muncy. These matchups, the Yankees bullpen lefties against the Dodgers lefties later on in games, if the Yankees can shut down to as much as they can, right? Because it's the Dodgers, they're going to score runs. But if they can have these guys come in and be effective against the top of the lineup, that will give the Yankees a big boost in terms of being able to win this series. Because that's really where I'm worried about most. It's like Carlos Rodon. The Dodgers order is flipping over a third time, and he's got to face Ohtani, Betts, and Freeman a third time in that fifth or sixth inning. That's when you typically see not only a starter kind of tire out, but that's when you see this Dodgers team really capitalize on fatigued pitchers. So that's kind of where I'm at right now on both sides. Now, do you have an early lean on kind of who you would pick to win this series and in how many games? What are you feeling as of right now?
Well, I think the Yankees have the better pitching situation right now, and I I think they have the better overall roster right now. I look at what the Dodgers have been doing with Shohei, and it just kind of feels like maybe they're 1 year too early. Like it just kind of feels like their pitching kind of like fell to injury a little bit too much. And I think the Yankees, as you mentioned, they have the five starters ready to go. They have the good bullpen, and obviously there's going to be some really tight games, and I wouldn't be surprised to see some extra innings action as well,
Oh
which
yeah.
I would be so down for. Um, but yeah, I think the Yankees will be able to kind of pull this thing out in 7 games. I don't know. How do you see the home field advantage playing out in this series? Because it's a cross country series. It's not like last year where it's not that long of a flight from Texas to Arizona, but this series, like, it's completely opposite sides of the country, completely different time zones. Do you see home field advantage playing a big factor?
Well, the goal for the Yankees, who have been a great road team this season, um, is to just steal a game in LA. That's the goal tomorrow and Saturday. You want to win one of those two games. You don't want to be going back home down 2-0 to where the Dodgers have an opportunity to close you out potentially, game 5 in the Bronx. Yeah, you don't want them closing the World Series out on your home field. That's just kind of a pride thing. Um, I think this though is going back to LA next Friday and Saturday for game 6 and 7. This will go, I think, 7 games. I think the Dodgers have a better chance to kind of blitz the Yankees, if that makes sense. I think
Yeah.
if one team is going to win this series and make it kind of a quick series, like a 5 game series, for example, a gentleman's sweep, I think the Dodgers have a better chance to do that to the Yankees than the Yankees do or have that chance to do the Dodgers.
Yeah, I can see
But
that.
I think just because I think if you stack up the best players in this series, if we're being realistic, the Dodgers have a slight edge in terms of high end talent over the Yankees. It's not a significant gap, but there is a little bit of a gap there uh, because you look at just top to bottom, the Dodgers are so stacked, and I'm so glad. I'm not glad for the injuries, but if you're a Yankees fan, you're catching a break in the fact that they don't have Tyler Glass now. They don't have Clayton Kershaw. Um, they don't have Dustin May. Like they have a whole rotation on the injured list. A
Yeah.
whole rotation of guys that are hurt and not pitching in this series. And then Otani is not going to pitch in this series, according to Dave Roberts. A lot of people have been wondering that, like, could Otani maybe come out of the bullpen for an inning in one of these high leverage spots,
That would,
game six,
yeah, I
game
think that's too
seven.
much to ask.
But he said today that's not going to happen. Um, so, going back to your question, the interesting thing is, like, the Yankees are good on the road, so I wouldn't be surprised if they win a game in LA. Maybe it's even tomorrow's game. The Dodgers though have the kind of lineup that can really be dangerous in Yankee Stadium with those lefties at the top of their lineup,
Yeah,
especially
the short
Shohei.
porch.
Now Shohei doesn't need the short porch to hit a home run, obviously, but they have a lot of those guys who can pop a solo shot or a 2-run shot out to the short porch and right. And so I don't know if there is like a significant home field advantage on either side. I think this is going to come down to game 6 and game 7. And who can less expose their bullpen, like who overexposes their bullpen and who can kind of save their bullpen more.
Right.
And then which top of the lineup is going to be able to capitalize more on their significant opportunities with runners on base. So far in this postseason, Dodgers have been significantly better in those situations than the Yankees have. But, um, you know, here's what I'll say. If this comes down to if both tops of the lineup are very good in this series and they're about even, which could very well happen. And this comes down to whose bottom of the lineup is better. I give the Dodgers the edge. Um, if this comes down to starting rotations, pitching to the back of their baseball cards, you obviously give the edge to the Yankees. If it comes down to the bullpens, though, that's going to be where it gets really interesting. That's going to be where things are probably ultimately going to be decided. My
Yeah,
pick,
we're squirreling nuts at that point.
yeah, ha 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 ha. My pick since Tuesday has been Yankees in 7. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if Dodgers win in 7. I wouldn't be surprised if Dodgers win in 5. Um, but as baseball fans, I don't want a quick series. I want
Yeah,
a
I don't
full
either.
7 games. I want a full 7 games. I want extra innings. I want everything. I want home runs. I want crazy plays, crazy pitching performances, low scoring games, high scoring games, everything. Um, and I can't wait. I don't think the nerves for me will kick in as a Yankees fan until like an hour before the game tomorrow. But just as an objective baseball fan, this is this is what we've been asking for years now, and we're finally getting it. So, any final thoughts?
Um, well, I expect Aaron Judge to really bounce back in this series. I think um, the thing he's been so good at all year long is not, swinging at those breaking pitches outside the zone. He doesn't get baited by that anymore. He didn't during the regular season. We saw a little bit of that come back in the postseason because he puts a lot of this pressure on himself. But I think going into this World Series, he's had a week of rest. I think he's going to kind of realize, like, I've got a great team here. I think he's going to be able to do his part, and I think he's going to play well.
Okay, a couple more questions before we wrap this thing up. If the Dodgers win the World Series, who wins MVP? If the Yankees win the World Series, who wins the MVP? And then one player from both teams that could be unsung heroes from each lineup that could be unsung heroes. So not the Otanis, not the Sotos, not the Judges, but another guy from each lineup that could be kind of the unsung hero on each side. I can give you mine if you want me to first.
Um, yeah, go ahead and give yours. Before you go, I was thinking the first name that comes to mind as an unsung hero is that rookie for the Yankees
Well,
at third base, I
Austin
think,
Wells,
right? Yeah.
Austin
Um,
Wells, the catcher.
I think he could be huge.
Yeah, I think for so MVP, I think if the Dodgers win, it'll likely be Otani. If the Yankees win, I mean Giancarlo Stanton's been red hot so far in this postseason. He's some would say carried the Yankees to this point.
Yeah, who would have thought?
Um, and Soto's been good. Judge has had some big hits, but his numbers wouldn't show that. Like his numbers don't quite explain how good he's been in some of these bigger moments and the defense that he provides in center field. Although I just think if the Yankees win, I have a feeling it's going to be Juan Soto. Um, Now, from an unsung hero standpoint, because Soto's one of the guys that is, you know, thrives on this stage. That you can
Yeah.
legitimately say like elevates his game when the lights are the brightest. Um, from a Yankees standpoint, I think it's probably one of these lefties that have struggled so far this postseason. Either Austin Wells, the catcher, who had a great regular season but has struggled in the postseason. Um, Jazz Chisholm, who was good when he came over at third base, but has not had a good postseason so far, hitting 5 for 31 so far this postseason with only one homer. That was meaningless when they lost. And then Alex Verdugo, who's at the bottom of their lineup, a veteran, a former Dodger, and a former Red Sox, um, who struggled this postseason. Out of that group, I think the unsung hero for me is probably Alex Verdugo. Just going up against his former team, has won World Series before, been in this moment before, and I think at the bottom of that lineup, being kind of the contact bat, um, I think he could be an unsung hero. And for the Dodgers, it's probably like a Teoscar Hernandez, who kills the Yankees every time he faces them, pretty much. Or maybe like a Kike Hernandez. One of those guys probably comes to mind as like an unsung hero. All right. So my official prediction is Yankees in 7. Your official prediction is
Fuck it. I'll say Dodgers in 7.
okay. Perfectly fine with me. Um, Hopefully you guys enjoy the series. My plan is to go live after. I'm going to try for every game to give reactions to every game. But if it's not every game, it'll be most games during this series. I'm going to try to do live reactions for most games. And then we will start our MLB offseason coverage shortly thereafter. We'll probably have a World Series recap, possibly. And then throughout the winter, we will have baseball episodes pertaining to big free agent signings, such as Juan Soto, which will be a big, big story this winter. So hopefully you guys enjoy the World Series, whether you love one of these teams or hate both of them. It's going to be an awesome series. Hopefully you guys enjoy this preview. If you like more content like this, please let us know. Make sure you like and subscribe. It helps our algorithm, which is key in today's world of content on YouTube. And for Michael Ween, he's Emmy Nixon. We will see you next time on the Raw Prospect Podcast. Peace out. Go Yanks.
Peace.